All right. Well, good morning, folks. It's 9 o'clock here. I don't know if you guys are hearing the dings or maybe a few more folks joining us. But to be respectful of everybody's time, we do want to get started as advertised. We want to get started right now. Appreciate everyone joining us. This is our 5th annual Salem District Locally Administered Program Day. As we noted in the information that we sent out before, this is not just exclusive to locally administered projects. There's a lot of things that happen in the local assistance world, such as helping out with funding applications and the various funding programs and things like that. Admittedly, primarily, a lot of discussions today will be about locally administered projects and the good work that you guys have done there in the local end. Before I get too far, I do want to pause real quick and do a quick audio check. Jay Guy, I believe you're on. Can you confirm that you can hear me properly?
I can hear you.
Awesome. So I'm going to go out on hopefully a thick limb and say that if you can hear me, that everybody else out there in Google Meet land as well. So again, thanks everyone for joining us. Like I said, this is our 5th annual one. We don't want to talk about what happened last year and why we didn't do it. Everybody's tired of talking about that. We know why we didn't meet in person. We did have a virtual presentation, if you will, of the Locality Year Award. We want to keep that going consistently. So we're able to do that last year. We're going to talk about that a little bit later on in today's meeting. Again, thanks everyone for joining us. We were joking in here in this room that we're in today, the folks who have joined us in here in person for presentation purposes, that about this time, if we were meeting in person with you guys, we'd be in the buffet line getting breakfast. You know, we always try to eat well at these events, and I do miss the fellowshipping and networking time with you guys, and hopefully we'll be back in person with everyone for next year's event. But again, thank you guys for joining us in the setting that we're in today. I want to do some quick housekeeping notes before we dive into what the agenda is, and then we have a few remarks from our district engineer, Ken King. But from a housekeeping perspective, in the Google Meet environment, if you guys, I'm sure you're very familiar with digital and virtual meetings at this point. Go ahead and mute your mics. That's the little image you see on the screen right now. That's how you mute your mic. Feel free to turn on your cameras later whenever you're asking questions or things like that or making comments. But I have found that if you're having any issues with internet connection issues or bandwidth, the turning off your camera may help that. For any folks that are having any issues hearing, Google Meet does offer a closed captioning option. You guys see that on the screen there as well. And throughout the morning, if you guys want to submit any questions or comments, we ask you to do those in the chat box. And you can see that's what that icon looks like on y'all's screen. We have some of our VDOT staff that'll be monitoring the chat box throughout the day. You don't have to only submit answers through the chat box, but sometimes it's a little more convenient to do that. We will be taking questions after each presentation, so feel free to unmute and ask questions at that point. So I don't have to tell folks where the restrooms are and things like that. Wherever you're sitting at, you probably know where your restroom is. Again, we're not offering and providing breakfast, so hopefully you found your favorite coffee and breakfast snack to get you going through this morning. So with that, I'm going to show you guys the agenda. This is the agenda that we sent out before the meeting. You have this in front of you. I'm not going to go through this in great detail now, but we have what we think is a pretty broad brush approach this year to the program. You guys that have participated in this in the past know that sometimes we have kind of walked through the life of a project, and we'll do PE, right-of-way construction, things like that. What we have found is our construction staff always gets pushed to the back of the agenda, and we always feel like by the time at the end of the day, everybody's so full and tired that they sometimes don't get the due attention that they deserve. So you see on the agenda, we've slid construction up to the front today. We've also did similar. We pulled environmental up towards the middle to make sure that they get the best attention of everyone. And then throughout the day, you see all the various topics we're going to cover. Some of these are going to be just kind of 10,000 foot level, just take a touchdown and pop back up type of deal, so that we can have further meetings and discussion with you guys later on. Some of them are just touches on hot topics. What's the hot trend going on right now in certain things. We do have some VDOT leadership remarks later on in the morning that we're real excited about. We have our Chief Deputy Commissioner, we have the Division Administrator of Local Assistance, and we also have our Commonwealth Transportation Board member that will be joining us a little bit later on this morning as well. So with that, and while this is still up on the screen so you guys can kind of be studying this, I'm going to turn it over to Ken King, our District Engineer, to make any comments he'd like to make.
Thanks, Anthony. Yeah, I was looking at the graphic there. I can tell you've got an interesting day ahead, both from the agenda as well as the pictures that are there. So I'm not exactly, looks like we're kind of packing for a trip, and and maybe teleporting back in time to see what congestion looked like in the 1960s and 70s, maybe. I'm not sure what the vintage of those vehicles are, but any of you that have participated in this Locality Day program, I think you'll notice that that Anthony Ford and Jay Guy and Adam and others that put together this program will have probably a number of interesting slides and pictures along the way. So that's, of course, to keep things interesting and light. I share Anthony's thought that certainly I would have much rather us all been together in person, and we look forward to the opportunity to come together and share in some closer camaraderie and discussion, and really a greater opportunity for the each of the locality participants to talk with one another. There are, I know Anthony and team does a great job of sharing some of the best practices and good work and things of that nature that's going on around the district, between the localities. But it's always best for folks to be able to talk one-on-one about some of those things, and some of these gathering points that we have is really what provides that great opportunity to make those connections. So that's not lost on us. It's a big priority, and certainly we'll look for opportunities not only in this activity next year, but any other opportunities that are offered up for us to be able to provide that networking opportunity, not just between us and you and your staff, but also among the locality representatives that are all working on these same types of programs and just doing excellent work. So I will say that all of you do a great job of making the Salem district to look good, and certainly Anthony as well. The Salem district continues to have, the localities have a large program, very active, very engaged, and that's certainly recognized, throughout the Commonwealth and at our leadership in Richmond of how active and engaged and successful the locality program is here in the district. So I really thank you all for, what you have been doing. Certainly when we think back to the pandemic and everything that we were doing through social distancing and virtual connections, and I just hats off to continuing to kind of keep the eye on the ball and deliver the projects and programs. We've always got room for improvement. We're always trying to gain every inch of that improvement that we can get year after year. I think I've shared how vitally important we recognize that to be, because the only way we get resources from our leaders, and appropriately so, I wouldn't want any of our political leaders to be giving us resources if there wasn't a confidence that we were going to take those resources and be good stewards of those tax dollars and really deliver on those investments in a way that is a real value add to the transportation network, which really is the lifeblood of the economy, and the quality of life. And so we are certainly seeing that around the district with your engagement and your work, both as it relates to logistics and connectivity issues that drives Amazon and all the changes in our world that we've witnessed over the last year, but also all of the various activities of multimodalism and a shift to pedestrian, bicycle, transit, and we set in a great position. We've seen so much recent investment and direction as it relates to some of the Amtrak extensions. We look so forward to the addition of the passenger rail station up in the New River Valley, and it's hard not to, if you're in tune and you've been around. This is just an exciting time in transportation and in this area. I think we are very well poised to take advantage of programs that emphasize connectivity and economic development as it relates to industrial parks and rural investments, but also I think we are poised and ready to take advantage of the urban areas and certainly the university settings that we have. We just stand in a perfect place to take advantage of all aspects of what we have to offer here in terms of transportation investments and improvement in quality of life. So certainly, a few years ago, or it seems like years ago now, I guess we started the letter writing campaign trying to point out where everybody stands with their on time and on budget. And I can just say that across the board, I appreciate everyone's efforts to improve in that area. No one sets out with their program with the goal of being behind or over budget or any of those things. life has its challenges, and certainly many of our localities, which I can certainly relate to, are very limited in the size of their staff. So it's, you know, I certainly appreciate the attention everyone has provided. I do think that we have done well with the taxpayers, you know, confidence in us, and the General Assembly's confidence in us, and that we continue to deliver great projects. And that's being recognized because there's been a continual support of investment from the General Assembly to the transportation industry that we are all a part of. And so I would just say thank you for all the good work you've done in that regard. It makes all of this possible. This great environment that we have now was not given, it was earned through a lot of work throughout the transportation industry and also within our political leaders on all sides that recognize transportation being critical to the improvement of quality of life. And so I appreciate everything that all of you are doing in that regard. Today will be a day of kind of plan the work the plan. You know, that adage, I certainly like that comment. So today will be a little bit of reviewing some of the key elements and strengthening in some areas that we recognize we've got opportunities for growth. So I certainly encourage you to be an engaged participant. Even though it's virtual, we want it to be two-way. We do want some interaction and questions and dialogue because that's where we really gain understanding. And through that understanding, we collectively find ways to make great improvements in our programs. So I appreciate your active engagement in these programs and in this training session. I will be sort of watching this and participating in this throughout the morning, and we'll join back when we do the announcement of our Locality of the Year a winner, which is always an exciting time. So again, thank you for your participation today, and thank you for all the good work you're doing. Anthony, I'll hand it back to you. All
right, thanks, Ken. And I failed to mention, you guys have not seen like an agenda that shows what time. We're planning to be wrapped up before noon. Anybody that knows me knows that I don't miss lunch. And so we're going to try to be wrapped up by 12 o'clock to get everybody on their way with the rest of their day. So appreciate everybody's time with that. I also wanted to say real quick, we have some of our presenters are in the room today with us. Some are going to be presenting remotely. Some of these presentations are actually pre-recorded with audio, and we're trying out brand new technology. And I thought there's no better time to break in brand new technology than when we invite 200 of our closest friends to participate. So if you guys will indulge us, if we have any technical glitches, we're going to try to work through those as quickly as we possibly can. So saying all that, I'm going to go through and start the next slide, which is the construction hot topics. This is one of our pre-recorded presentations, but we do have construction staff available to answer any questions that you guys might have. So again, through the presentation, feel free to type in any questions or comments you have in the chat box. But then at the end of the presentation, feel free to unmute and ask any questions that you might have. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and start this presentation.
Good morning. I'm Andrew Kale, Salem District LEP Construction Project Monitor. Today we'll be reviewing dashboard delivery performance in the Salem District, and we'll take a look at the relationship between NVAP and dashboard as it relates to the project completion date. We'll follow up with the time frame for entering the project completion data in NVAP, and finally we'll wrap up with the basic requirements of daily project documentation. The overall on-time performance in the Salem District for all contracts is 75%, with a target of 77%. This is a combination of both VDOT and locally administered projects. On-time performance for VDOT managed projects in the Salem District is 85%, with a target of 77%. On-time performance for locally managed projects within the Salem District is 54%. They also have a target of 77% of projects completed on time. The original contract completion date you enter into NVAP becomes the on-time measurement milestone in dashboard. Let's take a look. This project had an original contract completion date of February the 5th, 2021. NVAP was updated to reflect an anticipated current completion date of July 30th, 2021. This project has not yet been accepted. We'll stick with the same project and look at the duration between the original completion date and the current or anticipated completion date. That duration is 175 days and will be reflected in dashboard. Here you'll see the 175-day duration reflected in dashboard for our project from the last two slides. Before entering the specified completion date into the NVAP, contact me by phone or email. We can review your project schedule and time limits for potential impacts that may influence on-time completion as it relates to dashboard. At a minimum, the specified completion date should be entered into NVAP at notice to proceed and the calendar days forecast from that date forward. This is a project delivery overview for a locally administered project in the city of Salem, the downtown streetscape improvements. It had a contract acceptance date of 37 days before the original completion date. It's a green project on time. Prior to the city entering information into NVAP, together we reviewed their project schedule and time limits to determine exactly what that date should be.
All right, I think that was one of the glitches we were talking. Let's see.
Little speaker up top.
A few factors to consider when determining the contract completion date. These certainly aren't all, but a few we've encountered this year. Are there utilities that need to be relocated before the contractor can begin work or complete a portion of the project? When calendar days are forecast, does that result in a wintertime completion with paving operations? Since most, if not all, of our LEP projects are calendar day, just keep in mind simply that a calendar day project has a fixed date in dashboard, simply put.
Play again.
Keep in mind the original contract completion date is the dashboard milestone for your project. Dashboard measures project performance regardless of the funding source or if the project will be ultimately maintained by VDOT or the locality. Your assistance is greatly appreciated in helping to improve our performance. Thank you. These are just a few of the things that should be documented on your projects, by no means all. We will be conducting project documentation workshops later in the year and go into greater detail. As project documentation is concerned, I found this article online, and I think this paragraph summarizes quite well the importance of very good record keeping.
All right, so thanks, Andrew, for putting that together. Again, we typically shortchange our construction staff and put them at the end of the day. I know a lot of you guys have gotten to know Andrew over the last year or two, possibly three years. You know, again, 2021 is just gone from our memory, but at least mine. So I know a lot of you guys have gotten a chance to meet Andrew out in person, out in the field. He is a great resource, very knowledgeable in helping you guys deliver your construction projects, helping you guys with NVAP and things like that. Is anybody that's monitoring the chat box, any questions come in the chat box, or anybody would like to unmute, ask any questions to Andrew or any of our other construction staff that might be on? All right, well, seeing none, again, don't hesitate to, guys or gals, to type in any chat questions. We'll offer time again throughout the day. You guys are thinking of some right now, or perhaps you're talking with a coworker across the table and thinking, hey, what if we ask this? We can always come back and discuss these later. So to keep this moving, we're going to dive now into some things that everybody has to get involved in at some point. It's called public involvement. And we've identified some really cool tools over the last year or so that we want to share with you guys just to broaden your toolbox. I'm actually going to stop sharing my screen, and Nathan O'Kane is going to take over ownership of the presenting for the next few minutes. So I'm going to stop sharing. You guys hang with me 1 second. All right, so Nathan, if you're out there and would like to take ownership of the screen and go ahead and do your presentation. This is the exhibit or evidence of the potential technical glitches of having presenters in different areas. So actually, we're going to pull back up, and Michael Gray, are you on? We might have you and Adam do your portion first. Michael, are you on? All right, technical glitch number 3. How about Adam? Are you on? Adam said right beside
I am
him.
here.
I know Adam is on. So I'm going to go to Adam's presentation, and it is a quick slide on. Let me go back to sharing my screen. All right, so Adam's going to give us just a quick rundown of public hearing requirements, kind of straight out of the LAP manual, and maybe any input and additional experiences he's had with it. So Adam, go ahead.
This is a question we often get is, when is a public hearing required? The reference material for this is the LAP manual, chapter 12.4, and it brings out that public involvement of some type is required on all projects. Now that can range from a public hearing to a willingness to directly discussing the project with affected property owners and businesses. But specifically for public hearings and posting a willingness there, if you have a NEPA document and it's a categorical exclusion, a CE or higher, that would be the EIS and EAs, that document must be made available to the public when it's completed. So that means you either have to have a posting of willingness or a public hearing for that. That means you need to get far enough into the development of your project to finish the NEPA document before you can move into this particular public involvement process. Now, if it's a programmatic categorical exclusion, a PCE, or it's a state-funded project, there are situations where you may be able to meet it with earlier public involvement, such as on TA projects. You usually discuss the project when you're applying for funding. You'll have board or council action. That can qualify in some cases. Sometimes they'll have a multi-project downtown plan, and so that lets the public know in those cases. And those are prior to the projects specifically being developed. But as long as they're a PCE or lower or state funded, that may qualify. But of course, if you do have a posting of willingness and you receive a request for a public hearing, you generally have to have that, although you can try to resolve the concerns of the one who made that request individually, and they may be satisfied and willing to withdraw it, and then the willingness is sufficient.
All right, so I have gotten a message from Michael Gray that he is actually on with us, having a little bit of a technical issue on his audio end, but I'm going to go back to his slide. And Michael, if you are on.
All right, can you hear me now?
Loud and clear, loud and clear.
Okay, good. You're not sure why the phone part of it was not working. Yeah, I was hoping to follow Nathan because he has some very interesting information to share with everybody. But is there more to this slide than what's showing? Okay, good. I just wanted to go over very briefly public involvement and kind of what we've been doing within VDOT, not only during COVID, I put COVID on the slide, but really starting a couple years before that as well. As you can see, the first example I provided there is Martinsville Southern Connector. We had a public hearing during our COVID kind of closure there. So here's an example where we kind of had some unique accommodations to try to get this public hearing done. We had it at an outdoor location, and we had spacing requirements for the meeting, and for people that were waiting to get into the meeting, we would only let so many in at a time. So it was kind of interesting to see how we did that meeting compared to how we typically do our meetings, where we're indoors in an enclosed location, and everybody can kind of mill around and talk with folks and interact there. The second example is the Route 460 operational improvement study, and we actually did 2 public meetings there, and they're more citizen information meetings. They're planning studies, and one of them we had an in-person, but we had a virtual component of it in terms of our survey, and the second one was completely virtual. And both of those were fairly successful. But what I wanted to point out with that one was the use of our MetroQuest survey, which we started using as a state probably 3, maybe 4 years ago. It's a tool that we've been using within the state, and we've actually made it available to the PDCs and NPOs around the state to use. So many of you are members of a PDC or an NPO. So if you have some interest in using MetroQuest, you could reach out to them, and by all means talk to us as well. But the MetroQuest survey has been very successful, where our typical meetings, we get a handful of people. If we get 50 or even 100 people at a meeting, that's a fairly successful meeting. When we're meeting in person. But the MetroQuest survey allowed us to try to capture a lot more input from the public. And with our Route 460 study, we worked with, that's in Roanoke County and Roanoke City. We worked with Roanoke County and Roanoke City to get the word out. We used social media. So that was a very successful survey in that we had over 1,000 people take the survey. And we had just shy of 1,800 comments on that survey. If we typically got 100 comments, we're pretty happy with that. So to me, using that type of survey where people don't necessarily have to come to the meeting has shown us that we can have some more success in getting people involved that otherwise probably wouldn't be involved. Statewide, though, we've used the MetroQuest in 2019, 20, and 2021. We've used it about 62 times. In total, I think we've had close to 64,000 participants. We've had about 62,000 comments on all these different efforts. We've had as high as almost 17,000 comments on one particular issue or one particular meeting, and as many as like 9,300 participants. I don't know that that's going to be the norm, but it just shows that using these types of surveys and using these virtual ideas, and Nathan's going to show you a few of those. They do allow folks to come out and get involved where they might not otherwise. So y'all might want to consider those. As a state, we're going to continue to use MetroQuest. As you can see on the bottom of the slide, we have one that's called publicinput.com. It's more of a all-encompassing tool that allows us to do surveys, capture the input. We haven't started using that yet, but we're going to be using it fairly soon. So, as we keep moving along, we're going to, see what works in terms of having in-person meetings available for folks, have these surveys online, have these virtual type components of a meeting. We're just trying to find out what is the right mix to allow folks to participate and get the most participation out of individuals involved, as well as the PDCs and the NPOs that I mentioned earlier. So if you have any questions, I'll be glad to take them. Hopefully Nathan will get on because he has some good information about some tools as well.
Hey, Anthony, this is Jay. Just wanted to echo a comment we got in the messages that Joe Bonanno had indicated. Danville MPO had hundreds of responses to their MetroQuest usage for their Piney Forest Road connector study. So it is a good option.
Yeah, thanks, Jay. And I'm sorry about the feedback earlier. We have multiple speakers in here trying to duct tape this thing together. So hopefully this is working better for you guys now. And Nathan is going to be joining us hopefully soon. Actually, he just now See, here's where technology is awesome. I just got a message from Nathan. Ready when you are. So Nathan, I'm going to stop sharing again. You guys want to indulge me a second? All right. So I'm going to stop sharing. I'm going to mute myself, and Nathan is going to take over the presentation for the next few minutes. So Nathan, whenever you're ready.
Awesome. All right. So you should be able to see my screen. I think you can. Okay, great. So thank you so much, Anthony. I appreciate you having me here. My name is Nathan O'Kane. I work for the Office of Strategic Innovation in VDOT. I'm located in Salem. And today I'm going to be talking to you about some of the projects we did with virtual reality and some of the emerging technologies that are not in the distant future anymore. They are here and available for use. So let me make this full screen here. Hopefully that works. Yep. Okay, very good. So first I want to start with a little bit of terminology. So this stuff gets thrown around a lot, and we're not going to talk about everything today, but I wanted to give a quick introduction to some of the topics that we will cover. So augmented reality, sometimes people call it AR, is when you add things to your physical world that are digital. So like when you look through a clear glass and you were to put a building on a table, if you can see the table that's a physical object and the building, which is a digital object, that would be an example of augmented reality. VR, or virtual reality, is the goggles you put on. That means you don't see any of your physical world around you. It's completely virtual. And that's primarily what we're going to be talking about today. So 3D, this is applied to many different concepts, but it's beyond the static two-dimensional objects like you'd have, set of blueprints or plans. That's 2D. Three-dimensional could be a virtual reality or augmented reality component. And then 360. Sometimes these are pictures, sometimes they're video, but they are typically referencing cameras, which can capture the entire surrounding rather than just forward-facing. So actually, Anthony's got a 360 camera going on in his area today. So, much more common than we would think. All right, let's see. All right, so I want to talk about a project that we did on Hardy Road and Route 220 in Franklin County. So this is a 3-leg intersection, one leg being a, well, it's actually 4-leg, but one leg is a primary residence. So, really three state road directions and one private residence. We had a couple crashes here. Actually, I think there was 2 fatalities just due to the speed and curvature of 122 at this location. So, it had a history of crashes and especially serious ones. So they wanted to present a roundabout. There's not a whole lot of roundabouts out here, and some of the people in the area are not, used to using roundabouts. So we wanted to present it in one of the ways in virtual reality. So the goals of it were to convey the confusing topics, visually educate users. It gave us a better tool for discussing what's actually going to happen, and you'll see later how it gains public support by allowing them to drive it ahead of time to experience a roundabout before it's even built. So kind of gives people the opportunity to know what it's actually going to feel like going through it. And we'll show you that later. So the virtual reality workflow, these are all tools that VDOT has. And some of, localities may have access to this stuff as well. This was the pipeline that we went through. So the original plan can be done in MicroStation, but there's also a software package made by Bentley called Concept Station. Purpose of Concept Station is quick deployment of a plan set and easy changes and modifications, unlike MicroStation, which, if you make a big enough change, it can really set you back. So that gets you your general road layout and brings in the terrain. SketchUp is what you use to develop the landscape so that you can add landmarks that people will recognize. Helps orient the user in space so they know if they're driving towards their house, away from their house, to the store, etc. And then Bentley Lumen RT, which actually allows you to animate vehicles in your scene. All of that gets packaged up into YouTube and then can be shared many different ways. As you know, you can do it on your phone or PC, or and actually what we did here is a headset. So like I mentioned with Concept Station, you can just plop in a roundabout, pick your number of lanes, number of approaches, and it's pretty straightforward to get from a concept to a rudimentary design. And I want to point out here that any one of these steps could be an okay time to stop, right? If you're developing something, you don't have to go all the way to virtual reality. It's possible that if you get a good concept station rendering and then you bring it into Lumen-RT to add some cars to get the point across, that could absolutely be good enough. So just keep that in mind. You don't have to go full virtual reality like we did in this case. In fact, we rarely do that. Here's an example of a SketchUp model. So you can see over here in the image, you build the base geometry, which is a local gas station here. We actually went out to the gas station and took some pictures of the front and textured our mesh with that. So you can see it's, I make it look easy doing it like that, but it's a little bit more to it than just atomizing it into a gas station. So basic texture, and then we added some real world textures so that people could really identify which direction they're going. And here's some steps, if you really want to follow it step by step, how to get this model out of SketchUp and into Bentley Lumen-RT. And then the Lumen-RT, this is where you give your model life. You can put cars in here. Lumen-RT has actually come a long way since we did this originally, where you can actually add functional stoplights and things like that. So really, it's up to your imagination and time constraints that, what you can do with this model. But again, you don't have to go full VR. This could absolutely be a good enough demonstration to just play on loop to answer so many questions that you might have about the look of the roundabout. How's it going to go to the gas station? All of these questions. So, all right. And here's where you're going to coordinate traffic, add signage, add landscaping. You can simulate different times of day. You can simulate where the sun is coming from or going to. And totally set the scene so that you could show it in the morning, in the evening, and even address glare. Okay, but we went all the way to virtual reality. So what we did is we placed a virtual camera in the car and coordinated the vehicle timing so that we didn't have any vehicles running into another, which took some time. So once you got all that right, we did it from each approach. That way we had a video file for each. So we could ask the citizen, which way do you usually go, and then play that certain video clip for them. So here's a demo of it. And as you can see, I can grab my mouse and look around. So when you're wearing the headset, as you move your head around, that's where your eye is going to look. So they were seated, which is a very important part, is to have them seated. You can tell them to look left. It's a little hard to do with a mouse. It's so much easier with a headset on. And they could actually view this for themselves. All right, here's some pictures of the actual public hearing. What we did is we had a chair where the citizens could sit while they're watching through the goggles. And that was important because if you have somebody standing up, they can fall over. So important to have them seated like you would in a car. And then we also had it attached to a monitor so that if anybody was too shy to put the goggles on, they could experience it secondhand from the person who was in the chair, which, you get a lot more people through as well. So how did it work? So we did an exit survey of the folks that showed up. We didn't have a ton of people come through, but either way, we still had the files that we could put on the website afterwards. And we got pretty good response. So the virtual reality experience enhanced your understanding of the design for this intersection. Almost everybody was 4s and 5s. You're always going to have people that are just mad about, if I just give enough negative reviews, maybe they won't do it or whatnot. So, you're always going to have some people say, no. But the majority of the response was positive. And then we asked some questions like the virtual reality experience helped to educate you on how to drive a roundabout. We picked 3 for people who already knew how to drive roundabouts or who were familiar with it. So we have a really kind of disproportionate number of 3s. So these people know roundabouts, but we still had pretty positive reviews. We did receive some comments that were fair, like it was a little bit jerky, could use some more refinement, which is true. The whole thing was developed in about 3 weeks. So certainly and it was also our first try. So certainly with some more practice and best practices, we would avoid some of the pitfalls we had and challenges and skip over that step. So, but otherwise, very effective, strongly thought the technology is useful to show concepts, like the option of not having to wear the headset and watching on the external display. Not everybody wants to wear the headset. So, it's funny when we talk about VR, it seems far-fetched, but in reality, we've all seen Avatar, and well, I guess Avatar is an old movie now. We've all seen Avengers Endgame, and all of these very highly detailed CG movies now. So the public knows that is possible for displaying projects. They, not that they necessarily expect it from us, but they know the technology's out there, and you have to upgrade your methods every once in a while to meet that expectation. So that's what we want to do there. Pros and cons. So the project was better understood by the public. The experience instead of imaging changes. Not sure how that bullet got so botched. Sorry about that. But it definitely was a different experience for the citizens. It was a better tool for us to discuss with the citizen. We could pause it at a certain spot and say, is that what it's really going to look like? Or what about this? And then you had a flexibility in public involvement settings. So you could have this in person, or if you want to do it virtually, you could do that, or you can do both. So it's very flexible with your 3D models and 360-degree video. One of the cons is that your models must be accurate, because now that you're presenting a more detailed version of your plans, people are going to expect that is how it will actually look. So we did another project on 311 where we have a pedestrian bridge, and we put it very close to the rocks that were used, by locals for bouldering. And a lot of people were very curious if it was going to be that close. We got a lot of questions, and there was a lot of focus on that, when in reality, it was not going to be that close to the rocks. So that is definitely one of the challenges. Of course, these techniques require specialized software and skills, and takes additional times rather than just exporting a 2D plan set. So, there are some honest pros and cons of virtual reality. Actually, that is the end of my slides. So, Anthony, do you want people to ask me questions now, or go to Michael's and then I'll answer questions after?
Try this with unmuting. Actually, we went ahead and slid Michael's presentation in before yours. So he's already went, but I do see one question that came in the chat box. And Michael, I'm going to direct this to you initially, and then Nathan as well. It says, can VDOT do this, and virtual reality is what they're talking about, on behalf of a locality to promote a project? Any thoughts on that?
In the past, we haven't led taken on the responsibility of a locally administered project's public involvement. Not saying we can't, not saying we can, but we haven't done that in the past, as far as I know. Nathan?
Yeah, I don't know that I have anything extra to offer on that topic.
And I do see one other comment or question came in the chat box. It says, are there any businesses, alluding to private sector, emerging that can help with this? I imagine engineers will be offering this. Any other specialists you know about?
So I can talk a little bit about that. Is there any reason why we can't say the names of consultants we've used in the past for projects?
I don't think so. I think we're just recognizing ones we work with. We're not necessarily soliciting for or advertising for. So I think
right. Right. Okay, sure. So two that I can name off the bat, ATCS. No, sorry, not ATCS. RK&K did some beautiful virtual reality drive-throughs of the at-grade DDI concept for 460 and 220. I don't know if those have been shared broadly yet. It kind of hit right when COVID was happening. So we had the plans to go and have an in-person meeting with virtual reality, but obviously that got pushed back. So RK&K did a great job on that. And then also I think it was Trans Systems did the rendering for 311 pedestrian bridge. And again, some beautiful renderings of that. So I will drop those links in the chat after this, and you can go check out the models that I think they might be still on the site.
Yeah, and this is Michael. Just from the standpoint of holding a virtual public meeting or using some of the survey tools that I mentioned, just about any of our consultants that we've worked with, have some experience in that, especially now, given the last year or so. But yeah, just about all those consultants can help with, using some type of virtual or online survey tool, or setting up a virtual meeting and the components that need to be put in place for that.
All right,
Here's a
thank you.
different screen. This is just one screenshot of what is a complete 3D model of this pedestrian bridge. This is the boulders that I was telling you about, that the abutment for this pedestrian bridge was close to, that we got so many questions about. So, but you can see, I mean, this is an absolutely beautiful model, and helps people really visualize what the final product will look like.
Good deal. Anybody else out there have any comments or questions for these folks as far as public involvement or tools that can be used for that? All right. Again, you guys can feel free to add any to the chat box that you would like throughout. I really appreciate these folks put this together. We thought that you guys would be interested in some of the tools that might be available to you for, for planning studies you're doing, for applications you're working on, things like that. And so hopefully you guys appreciated that information as much as I do. So Nathan, it looks like you've stopped presenting. I am going to take back the screen. All righty. And with that, we're going to go turn it back over to Adam, and he's going to walk through his portion of the presentation of getting the project off to a good start.
All right. Just some background reminders to set the stage. Remember that the dashboard schedule is baseline for those first 3 activities when the project receives funding. So that's your project agreements, the start of development, and then your scoping activity. That schedule is set before you even get involved with the project. So that means that if you have any delays in getting the request to administer form or completing the project agreement, that doesn't push out the completion for scoping. Matter of fact, that scoping date, that deadline date that's set in dashboard, that's part of the project agreement Appendix A that is signed by the locality. So it's vital that to get things moving, that you get that request to administer form back as quickly as possible and execute that project agreement as quick as possible as well. To help though, we do have some PMO developed some new schedule templates for locally administered projects. We understand that the ones that were used prior, they really didn't give enough time from the beginning of the project to scoping completion. Now, if you have an existing project, it doesn't get updated, but that's not a problem, because once you get the scoping, and those old template projects should be there by now, you get to set the schedule. You get to tell us what the schedule is going to be for all the activities beyond scoping. And that's true of the old and the new templates. Now, the major changes, we have longer durations for those 3 activities that we talked about, but they also added in time that it takes to procure a consultant. So now you have a reasonable amount of time to get the project started and get scoping completed and remain green on dashboard, which was a challenge for many projects under the old templates. And so this just shows the comparison of the old template to the new template. You can see how much time was added. You really only had a little over half a year prior, and that included the project agreements. But now, once that project agreement is completed, you still have 210 days. And that is the exact amount of time that VDOT is also given on their projects. So everybody gets the same amount of time to get scoping completed. So the big question is when to begin your consultant procurement. Now that template I showed you, it showed it occurring after the agreement and the start, the PE was authorized. But if you think about the number of steps that are required, that's a lot of things that have to occur. That's why the template provides 6 months in there. It could be done in 3 if everything lines up well. But the back and forth, the time to advertise, the time to set up interviews, to negotiate, and pre-award audit is not always a smooth process. Means that it likely will take close to 6 months. Now the template, if you started consultant procurement, if you started that all those steps after you got PE authorized, and it took you that full 6 months, that's only going to leave 80 days for the consultant to scope the project. And what that's going to mean is your project will probably go red in dashboard, because 80 days is not a lot of time to get the survey, get some information in there into the CAD system, look at the possible scenarios. So we encourage you, start that process before the project agreement has started. You can work on preparing the RFP. You can get it to VDOT and have us review and set it. You can even have it advertised. Once you've done the request to administer and you've got that approval, yeah, you're not into the project agreement yet, but you've got approval that you'll be administering it. The CTB has approved the funding. The UPC is established, so you know you're going to have a project. Now your consultant can't actually begin work until the agreement is executed and the PE phase is authorized, but you can have everything else completed prior to that, so that the consultant is ready to go on day one when all the other steps are completed. So we do have some common questions we want to cover there, where things potentially go off the rails for consultant procurement. One is, we often get this question: we've got this consultant we've worked with, can we just go out and hire them directly? Well, no. The procurement regulations, federal and or state, they must be followed, and they do not allow that direct hire. You might have a term services, commonly called an on-call contract. Can you use that? Well, there's several questions. For that term services contract, did VDOT review the RFP before you advertised it to look at federal language, looking for a DBE goal if it was supposed to be established? Did you follow that procedure in the Chapter 11 of the LAP manual for ranking firms, shortlisting firms, doing the interviews? Did VDOT perform a pre-award FAR audit if your fixed amount fee is $200,000 or more, or if it doesn't have a fee amount that's specified, if it's open-ended? So if the answer to any of those questions is no, then that term services contract cannot be used. This is often one people want just in the responses to the RFP. They'd like to know what price they would offer. Can you request that? It's like, no. Contract cost can only occur after the shortlist interviews are completed and your top ranked firm is informed. So that's when you start negotiation. Price cannot be a component of the discussions before then. We often like to work with local firms. We understand that. That little thing is popping up there. So can you include local preference in scoring firms? Well, no. Location of a firm is not an allowable item to use as part of the scoring. It's a violation of federal regulations. So one thing it's important to know that good marketing doesn't always equal good performance. And what we mean is firms can be very good at interviews, but what's their performance? Sometimes it's good to talk to other localities, find out how firms have done on their locally administered projects for them. We look at the dashboard results. Obviously, if a locality doesn't get a consultant on board until scoping is almost done, that's not the consultant's fault that the project is red. But just in general, how have they done for the schedule that they've said they can meet? And that's important to know because many of the firms we work with, they work for multiple localities. So share that information with each other. So does anybody have any questions?
I think one did come in the chat box. I can't see the chat box, but Jay, can you look at the chat box real quick and read any questions that came in since we last referenced the chat box?
Sure. There was one question actually related back to the last presentation on. We're getting a little bit of that feedback again there too, Anthony.
I gotta do it on mine here.
Adam's going to mute me. Hang on a second. This is the dry run with new technology. I appreciate you guys helping us work through this.
There we go. There was one question that related back to Nathan and Michael's presentation about any civil rights or ADA requirements that might have come up using more advanced technology. Were there any special circumstances or anything that needed to be addressed, or any questions that came up during that, maybe first time out, just to make sure that all the requirements are met to hold a formal public hearing when using those advanced technologies?
This is Michael. I can't remember any comments or concerns there other than one person, and it was an issue related to what about folks without a computer. And, you know, one of the things we talked about is, you know, computers are available at library of that issue that much. Unfortunately, during COVID, the libraries were closed. So I'll look into that and see if there's been any more discussion and try to get back. Do we have who put that comment in that we could respond back to them?
Sure. It was Emily in Montgomery County, but I think lots of folks would be interested in that, particularly with those that might be vision impaired or hearing impaired when wanting to access some of the more advanced, you know, VR or augmented reality kind of thing. So I think it's a great question.
We'll look into that and try to get something back.
All righty. Well,
that catches us up on the chat box, Anthony.
All right. Thank you very much. And again, anybody wants to continue to add those, feel free to do so. I think now we're going to transition to Tommy DeJulian, who's going to talk about some of our dashboard issues and concerns, probably more so on the development side of the house. But I'm going to take back the presentation.
Screen share.
I think I am. Yep, I am.
Okay.
All right.
All right. Good morning, everybody. This is Tommy DeJulian. I'm the project development engineer here in Salem. So I did want to talk a little bit about some of the VDOT performance metrics and dashboard. We heard Andrew talk a little bit earlier about the the dashboard numbers sort of on the project delivery side and construction. So I'll sort of focus most of my remarks on the project development side. So getting projects to advertisement and award.
Can you just make that click?
I'll try that. Okay. So first, just sort of at a high level, when we're talking about dashboard, it's really all about transparency and accountability, building trust with our citizens. I think, Ken mentioned earlier, General Assembly members and, providing resources to VDOT. And really, this is a way to, show people that we're making good use of the funds that we have. We're doing what we say we're going to do when we say we're going to do it. And so it's really, important to measure this and try to, improve the performance and do well with the resources that were provided. On the right-hand side of this slide is, what we call the, in VDOT, the bingo card. It's a, sort of a summary of all of our, or most of our performance metrics at VDOT. So it's more than just project development, project delivery. It includes safety elements, operations, conditions of our assets, our bridges, and our pavements. So we review this at least quarterly with leadership in central office. We have a lot of good discussion. We use this time to really look at trends, identify best practices, look for ways to improve performance. So it's a good exercise and it stays sort of at the top of the list. Certainly the project development and project delivery, gets a lot of focus during these reviews. So just wanted to give you all sort of a heads up or a higher level idea of some of the reviews that we do. And so here, Anthony mentioned something about the challenges we've been having with Dashboard, and I know sometimes we look at things in a little bit, always trying to improve and point out some of the negatives. But I wanted to take this opportunity really to thank everybody for all the work that they've done over the last couple of years. This is the localities, all the localities, and the consultants that are working with them, all of our partners. The Salem district has met the performance targets on the development side for on time and on budget for the last 3 years. So we just finished FY21 on June 30th. And so we're one of 2 districts across the state that can say that. So again, really great work. 3 years running. Hopefully FY22 will be the same. And I want to point out that we can't do that without our local partners. The locally administered projects over the last 3 years, have made up over half of our program. So if you all succeed, we're going to succeed. We certainly can't do this without you. So again, just kudos out to everybody for all the work they've done over the last couple of years, particularly the last year with some of the challenges we've had. So all good stuff here. So really appreciate it. On the next slide here, just wanted to sort of give everybody a heads up that the Local Assistance Division has sort of put together a report that has the same information in Dashboard. It's just some different ways to look at it. It also does include some information regarding the timeliness of billing, and that's something we probably don't talk about enough. We do encourage the localities to bill us timely, and certainly encourage y'all to go out and look at this report. You can get to it off of the VDOT website on the local assistance page. And I've got a couple of screenshots here on the next slide that sort of show you some of the different ways that you can drill down into this report. The upper left, you'll sort of see the overall measures, the on-time performance, on budget, as well as sort of the billing information. So the number of projects, which ones have not been billed yet, which ones are sort of showing up as late billing. There on the lower left, you can actually drill down and look at that billing information on a project by project basis. So it can be very helpful. On the upper right, sort of a screenshot of most of couldn't fit all of the localities in the Salem district, but you can see how all of the localities sort of measure up. So if you're interested in how you're doing relative to your neighboring localities, you can take a look at this drill down and sort of see how you're doing compared to others. The one on the bottom right, shows how you can drill down even further into a specific locality. This one happens to be the city of Roanoke, so it shows all of the city of Roanoke projects that are in Dashboard, and you look at those individually to see how they're doing. I do want to make a shout out to the city of Roanoke. They had a lot of projects in FY21, and actually were responsible for 10 of our 14 green projects this past year, and certainly couldn't have met those targets without them. So thank you to the folks in Roanoke for the great work that you're doing. Okay, so I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the things that we've learned over the last several years. With Smart Scale coming around 5 or so years ago, things have changed. We're setting our budgets earlier on the Smart Scale projects. They're set when a project is funded. The scopes are set. So we wanted to sort of pull together sort of some lessons learned, at least at a high level. And I think our experience over the last several years with not just the locally administered projects, but but VDOT projects is, really boils down to, it all starts with a good quality application. And that includes the sketch, the scope, nailing down the scope, detailed sketches, and then realistic estimates. And I think we've talked a lot internally that we've had most success when we have good sketches that clearly define the scope. And I think that allows us to really do a better job at estimating the cost of the project. When we have very high level sketches, I think it's too easy to miss some things that are going to be required in the ultimate project. So I'll just reinforce and recommend detailed sketches, realistic estimates and schedules. Anticipate, trying to anticipate some of the things that may go wrong. I think most of us that have been doing this for a while realize that there are very few projects that go exactly as planned. There's always something that comes up, and I think our job as we're setting these schedules and budgets earlier on, we have to try to anticipate those. So put some float in your schedule, try to anticipate some of those things, use some contingencies. I know Alex Price will be talking about some of the things we're doing on the estimating side here coming up later. So certainly we'll have some resources for you there. Again, under promise, over deliver. Is it half full or half empty? I think optimism is certainly a great trait to have. I think when we're developing estimates and schedules, I think we need to sort of take a little bit different look at that and acknowledge some of the things that may go wrong. So but again, it all starts with quality application. We're setting our scopes and budgets much earlier in the process, and it all starts with the application. So on the lower right, just a couple of things that we've learned, over the last several years. Adam touched on some of this, in his presentation, but getting off to a good start, getting the agreements executed, getting your consultants lined up, and really getting off to a good start. The other piece would be really managing the schedule and the budget throughout the process. Oftentimes we talk about add dates and really sort of focusing on the add date, but I think it's important, and we've learned that if we can keep our focus a little nearer term and really focus on meeting those, intermediate milestones, we do better. So it's just, managing this through the process, managing scope creep. Again, going back to those sketches and the applications, our scope should be pretty well set when we get a project funded. So we need to try to stick to the scope of the project. The last bullet there is really just, planning to deliver early. I think most people have heard about, the just-in-time delivery type stuff in the manufacturing arena, and it works great there, but the just-in-time delivery usually doesn't work out very well on project development. So I encourage everybody to shoot for early finishes and plan to deliver the projects earlier, and we'll all be in much better shape.
All right. Anybody have any questions for Tommy in relation to dashboard or anything in the project development side of the house while we have him here with us today? Checking the chat box on Adam's computer, and also folks can feel free to unmute and ask any questions as well. All righty. Well, hearing none, and maybe perhaps folks are withholding their questions because they want to take a break. I think that's next on the agenda. We're going to do a mid-morning break here. Again, we don't have the opportunity to network with you guys during the break and answer any questions. But I have 10:09 official VDOT standard time. We're going to we'll start right back at 10:20. I give everybody time to use the restroom and check their emails, all stuff like that. So we will start back promptly at 10:20, and look forward to joining you folks again here in about 10 minutes. So we'll see. Yep. All right, folks, we got a 2-minute warning. It's 10:18. We're going to start back here in 2 minutes. All righty, I got 10:20 here on our end. I assume no one's in a different time zone, so everybody's at 10:20 here. So it just dawned on me as I just started talking. I asked all the presenters in this room to introduce themselves before they started talking. And here now we're an hour and 20 minutes into it. I never introduced myself, and fairly certain that everybody out there has worked with me over the years. I'm Anthony Ford. Totally apologize for not introducing myself earlier. A little late in the game now, but wanted to make sure I at least got my name out there in case anybody was wondering who in the heck you've been listening to for the better part of this morning. So
Yeah, I didn't introduce myself either.
you didn't either. So yeah, we're all to blame there. So all right, so we're starting back up on the agenda. We're picking back up with the cost estimating portion, and Alex Price is going to be sharing some thoughts and slides here. So Alex, we have your slides up. So whenever you want to go to the next slide, just let us know and we'll advance the slides.
All right, thanks, Anthony. And can I just make sure you can hear me?
Yes, we can hear you very well.
Very good. So good morning, everyone. My name is Alex Price, and I'm the Salem District Location and Design Engineer. Today, I'd like to discuss the subject of cost estimating for our transportation projects. This morning, I want to first talk about some of the expectations for developing accurate and reliable cost estimates. Next, I'd like to cover the steps VDOT has taken to improve cost estimating statewide. And finally, I'd like to review some steps and tools that we're using to help VDOT and localities improve the cost estimating process. Next slide. Reliable and accurate cost estimates at every stage of the project life cycle are crucial to VDOT's overall mission. Over the last couple of years, there's been a tremendous effort by the department to provide measures to ensure we have reliable and accurate cost estimates for every project that gets approved in the 6-year plan. Accurate cost estimates are important for instilling and maintaining trust when delivering our program, not only with the decision makers, but also with the public. Keep in mind, everyone has access to the project schedules and budgets using Dashboard and can monitor how well we perform in delivering projects on time and on budget. Establishing a realistic budget during the development of a project application is critical because this estimate becomes the budget throughout the life of the project. More and more emphasis has been placed on developing reliable and accurate estimates up front, as we are expected to deliver all projects within the budget set at the time of the application. When estimated project costs deviate from what was budgeted, it can result in a reduction of the project scope, a delay in the project schedule, or could lead to the project being canceled. Given these expectations, we all need to be more deliberate with our estimates to get a handle on how much projects will truly cost. Next slide. So what is VDOT doing to make sure reliable and accurate cost estimating is a priority? we took an internal look at our cost estimating or our current estimating practices, processes, and performance. In 2020, we hired Ernst & Young, a multinational consulting firm, to perform an estimating and bidding study. E&Y took a good look at our tools and practices for cost estimating and evaluated bids over a 5-year period. They also interviewed people responsible for project development and delivery, both internal and external to VDOT across the state. This study confirmed on a program level, VDOT overall is doing a very good job with cost estimating. However, the study did identify some room for improvement that could lead to better cost estimates. Next slide. Key recommendations from the study were presented to the Commonwealth Transportation Board in the fall of 2020. 2 of these recommendations have been implemented and 2 still being developed. First, VDOT established a cost estimation office. This office opened up in January of 21. Next was to consolidate our existing cost estimating practices with some of the new guidance in a cost estimating manual. This was recently completed. Third is to develop and implement a cost estimating training program. And fourth is to create an estimating technology roadmap. Next slide. So based on the recommendations from the study, VDOT has implemented a statewide cost estimation office. It has been up and running since January of 2021 and is managed by Mitch Ball. The mission of our cost estimating office is to equip and enable VDOT personnel and business partners with leading cost estimating practices, philosophies, approaches, and tools. This office also will be responsible for developing and implementing statewide policy to ensure accuracy and consistency in our cost estimating. To help VDOT, localities, and our transportation industry, this office has been creating the new cost estimating manual and launching a new training program. Next slide. The first version of the cost estimating manual was completed in spring of 2021. It is predominantly a compilation of existing VDOT estimating policy, guidance, and tools from various sources, combined with new guidance on specific aspects of VDOT estimating. The manual is intended to be a resource for everyone involved in the cost estimating process. This includes VDOT project development and construction staff, localities, and our consultants. One of the manual's strengths is that it includes resources for engineers and other technical professionals, as well as those who are new to cost estimating. It's being published in an electronic format to include appropriate hyperlinks. The manual was created with extensive input from VDOT staff and industry partners, working groups that represent a good cross-section of professionals from across the state were assembled to revise the manual and ensure all aspects of the cost estimating process are covered. The manual is a living document. Cost estimating techniques, processes, tools, and systems are constantly evolving. It will be periodically updated to reflect the changes. The latest version of the manual is planned to be available on VDOT's website this month. Next slide. Also wanted to make you aware of another guide to help with cost estimating. The right-of-way cost estimate guide has been developed to provide greater depth and direction when preparing right-of-way cost estimates. This guide does not replace policy as specified in the right-of-way and utilities manual, but serves as a resource to assist an estimator with evaluating and solving common issues that may surface in preparing right-of-way cost estimates. Version 3 is the latest and was made available in June and can be found on VDOT's website. I'm providing a direct link in the chat feature for you to take a look. Let's see, there you go. All right, next slide, please. Next, I'd like to take a closer look at some specific steps that can help with developing a realistic and accurate cost estimate, and therefore a competitive application that leads to a successful project. First, you need to identify the problem that a project will address. Without specifically focusing on what you're trying to solve up front, you run the risk of not identifying the most effective solution. This will inflate scope and cost and will lead to a non-competitive or non-viable project. You'd be surprised at the number of times we receive applications that don't actually address the real problem that is trying to be solved. Next, you have to propose and analyze potential solutions. It's important to identify the right size solution and avoid including project features that do not add value or address the specific problem. Including extra features or work items that do not solve the specific problem will inflate the project scope and cost. Finally, you should determine the appropriate scope of work. It is extremely important to identify and document all the decisions and assumptions that need to be considered when developing the scope of work for your project, cost estimate, and application. For example, we sometimes see applications for projects that were submitted without considering key items, like the required right-of-way, the adequate site distance, or necessary stormwater management requirements. We also have seen applications that did not take into consideration the appropriate level of traffic control during construction, how ADA compliance will be met, or the extent of utility impacts. Next slide, please. As part of the application process for all funding types, you must submit project sketches, estimates, and an estimate workbook. These items should be included as a part of your application. VDOT will use this detailed project information to validate your application. A detailed project sketch should include as much information as possible, such as typical sections, drainage and utility design concepts, and appropriate bike and ped accommodations. Details about proposed signals, signing, lighting, retaining walls, and pavement also would be included. This sketch, along with a clear understanding of the scope, should be developed prior to starting your cost estimate. Project cost estimates should be developed and reflect all items in the project descriptions and sketch. We ask that you use a line item estimating method with the understanding this level of detail may not be known at the time of submittal for all applications. Line item estimates will allow us to better understand how you developed your estimate. The cost estimate should be as realistic as possible and account for known items and quantities, as well as those quantities that will be determined later during the development of the project. We would expect a few quantities or items to be grouped together using lump sum pricing, but documentation and justification for how the cost is developed needs to be included. Once the cost estimate has been developed, it needs to be transferred to the cost estimate workbook. This workbook is a spreadsheet that can be downloaded from VDOT's website to assist in generating cost estimates for all funding applications and for refining the cost estimate on funded projects throughout the development process. This tool is used to assemble the PE, right-of-way, and construction estimates, document project decisions or assumptions, and apply risk-based contingencies. A final project cost estimate is generated once the base estimates, applicable contingencies, incentives, and miscellaneous project costs are entered into the workbook. Next slide. Now I'd like to spend a little bit of time taking a closer look at an example of a cost estimating workbook. As stated previously, this tool is used to assemble the PE and right-of-way and construction estimates. It also allows for grouping of similar items such that risk-based contingencies can be applied appropriately. A final project cost estimate is generated, again, once the base estimates, applicable contingencies, incentives, and miscellaneous project costs are entered into the workbook. Next slide. A separate sheet in the cost estimate workbook provides an acceptable percentages of contingencies that need to be applied to each discipline for each phase of the project's cost estimate. These contingencies are a function of risk and level of project development and should be applied as demonstrated above. The level of development for new project applications are expected to be within the 0 to 10% range, and further project development may allow for an adjustment of the contingency used. Typically for new applications, and we saw this in our smart scale applications this past year, we'll need to use contingencies for most of our disciplines in the construction phase in the 30 to 40% range. Again, it just depends on the project development that has taken place when the application has been submitted. Next slide, Adam or Anthony. The PE and right-of-way phases are an important part of the estimate. However, for today's discussion, I'd like to highlight a few details in the workbook for the construction phase estimate. Let me first discuss the items at the bottom of the figure because these are important, but also are often overlooked when developing a construction estimate. Contingencies, as previously discussed, do not cover these items. So therefore, CE&I, VDOT and locality oversight, incentives, utilization of locality or state forces, railroad flagging and coordination, and cost of claims and work orders need to be accounted for and populated in the rows listed in the workbook. Now let me move to the top of the sheet to discuss populating costs for each discipline. The type of work to include in each discipline should be pretty self-explanatory. These disciplines essentially will contain items associated with similar work for a project. When entering costs for each discipline, we would like to know the source where the costs for the items came from. There's a drop-down box which provides you multiple choices like bid tabs, past projects, multiple estimating tools, or professional judgment, just to name a few. I'll speak to entering the base costs for our disciplines in a second. The next column is where we would enter our contingencies for each discipline. The contingencies should be taken from the sheet I spoke of earlier, and again should be a function of risk and level of project development. This snapshot does not have the heading, but to the far right is where we would need to have documentation on assumptions which were made when calculating the base cost and developing contingencies used for the type of work being quantified. Now moving back to the base column or base cost column, we use one of our estimating tools to help quantify and populate cost. Anthony, next slide, please. All right, this example uses what we refer to as the Stanton District's estimating spreadsheet. Today, I'm not going to get into the details of developing the cost estimate, but show how we have grouped like items into separate disciplines as they are listed in the cost estimating workbook. As you'll see, we have color-coded items associated with each discipline and totaled them to the right of the estimate. Next slide. So at this point, we're able to easily transfer cost for each discipline to the cost estimate workbook to the appropriate location. All right, next slide. In addition to the cost estimate workbook, there are several tools on VDOT's website that you may find useful in developing cost estimates for your applications. A link to this website. Let me see, a link to this website. I'm posting to the chat feature now. And I did use an example of the Stanton District's estimating spreadsheet earlier, and I'll just state that that's one that we have found to be the most useful when we're developing detailed cost estimates. If you have questions on how to use the workbook or other cost estimating tools, there are also tutorial videos on this website. And I'd also like to mention that our district is planning to host a cost estimating workshop where we will discuss in greater detail the development of a project scope of work, detailed estimates, and cost estimating workbooks. I would invite you and your consultants or anyone else involved in the estimating process to attend. The date and time of the workshop has not been finalized, but we're planning to have it before the SMART portal opens for the submission of final revenue sharing and TA applications scheduled for August 15th. Be watching for the emails from us with more details. Next slide. All right, that concludes my presentation. I'll be happy to take questions at this time.
Alex, it does look like one question came to the chat box just now. Actually, let me back up one second. There was one question about when the cost estimating manual will be available. Looks like Jay's already addressed that by saying and confirming what you said as well, be released later this month. And then you of course sent out some links. And then a comment, or rather a question came in and says, does just the Excel workbook need to be uploaded or an additional PDF version? Can someone speak to that?
Yeah, let me speak to both of those, Anthony. And thanks, Jay, for your response. To implement this cost estimating manual, we're going to have a to take a sequenced approach to this, given, we're wanting to use this for all of our projects, but some, it may be more appropriate to use when we're, say, applying for applications or we're submitting applications, as opposed to using it for projects that are, getting ready to go to add. There's certain aspects in the manual that provide some requirements that, again, it's just not suitable for projects where they are in the current project development process. But the cost estimating manual, well, we're working on how to sequence or how to phase the workbook in, and central office is requesting our feedback, and all indications should be, once that feedback is obtained, which is due by the end of this week, that the workbook should be available before the end of the month. So the month of July. As far as the workbook being uploaded into, what time should it be uploaded in Excel or PDF version? I would ask that both of those versions be uploaded. We are reviewing those workbooks, and we will be looking at and possibly modifying some of those workbooks or recommending some modifications be made. So for us to really get into some of the details of providing some support, I would ask that the Excel spreadsheet be submitted, and I'll just go ahead and provide both the PDF file as well.
All right, thanks, Alex. Anyone have any additional questions? While you're thinking of that, I'll add real quick, for you folks who have been applying for funds for years, whether that be through revenue sharing or TA or other programs, there's been a big shift in what we're requiring as far as cost estimating, as far as the details with the applications, with the scope identification, things like that. It is important to note that all projects, once they're funded, get adopted into the 6-year improvement program. All projects get monitored on the project dashboard. So we're trying to apply a consistent approach across the board with the initial applications, the initial estimates, the initial scopes, just like we do with Smart Scale. So a lot of the things that you guys have kind of adopted with Smart Scale mentality over the years, that is merging and morphing into the revenue sharing and TA world as well. So again, we know this is a big change, and we appreciate your patience in working with us, and appreciate Alex and his group providing such good oversight, and going to be offering this training here in the next month or so on that. So any more questions on cost estimating before we shift over into the environmental hot topics? All right, well, hearing and seeing none, we're going to shift over to Miss Robin Simpson. We'll be talking about environmental hot topics. So Robin, I'm going to mute and turn over. Oh, I guess I can't mute, can I? No, you got to keep going.
Okay, I'm Robin Simpson. I'm one of the natural resource specialists in our office, and I'm going to talk about some of the big issues, or several of the big issues that came up with environmental topics this year. So one of the big things that came up was who is taking jurisdiction over ephemeral streams. Is it the Corps? Is it DEQ? What's going on with that? At this point in time, we're being told that the Corps is not taking jurisdiction over the ephemeral streams. However, DEQ may or may not. It depends on your project, what kind of impacts you have. So you have to coordinate with DEQ to see whether they're going to take jurisdiction or not. This may require you to get a permit, which may have a permit fee. And then depending on your length of impact, you may have some mitigation that you will have to pay as well. So just be aware when you're dealing with ephemeral streams, the Corps is not going to take jurisdiction, but you will have to double check with DEQ. We have had that happen on a couple of projects recently. Another issue has been the 401 certification and nationwide permits. DEQ did not give certification, the 401 certification, to some of the nationwide permits. There's about 15 or 16 of them that I've got listed here. So what does this mean to you? This means if you're going to use one of those permits that did not get 401 certification, then you're going to have to go through DEQ and the Corps to get a permit from each. DEQ will either give you a waiver or a VWP permit, and the Corps will issue whatever applicable nationwide permit applies to the project. There's a couple issues with this. There's been no time frame given for how long it may take to obtain the 2 separate permits. So this may affect the time schedule on your project. It may also affect the cost. The other thing we don't know is how long it's going to take before the 2 agencies will agree and 401 certification will be given to those nationwide permits, and you only have to go back to 1 permit. So just be aware that if you're going to use any of these permits, nationwide permits listed, you're going to have to go to DEQ as well. So you're going to end up with 2 instead of 1, whereas the past, it's been a simple process of just applying for the 1. We had a couple LAP projects that got caught up in the Section 408 review this year as well. And this is administered by the Corps of Engineers. And it was dealing with the projects in the Roanoke River Basin. And we actually had to go to the Wilmington District Corps to ask to make sure we weren't going to be impacting any of their projects in the Roanoke River Basin as well. The problem that we run into is that they will not give you a specified time frame for the review and clearance. One of the locality projects we had, it was close to the end of the year for the Corps, and they had run out of money in just Wilmington District, and they told us they would get to it when they got to it. They were waiting for their money to come in, and then they wouldn't tell us where we were on the list. It ended up going through quicker than we thought, but just be aware that if you have a project in the Roanoke River Basin, you may be required to go through this 408 review, and we can't give you a time frame on how long it will take. I know that's not something anybody wants to hear, but unfortunately, that's kind of where we're sitting at this point. The main thing that I wanted to talk about that we're seeing is we want to make sure when you're doing your project scope that you list all potential impacts that you could have on any environmental issue. You need to add, if there's jurisdictional impacts, you need to include your permanent and temporary. If there's riprap, is it going to be stream bank or outlet protection? Is it actually going to get within ordinary high water? Tree removal, we need to know how much in acreage, and we're also asking too, when you're dealing with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and going through the IPAC process, not only do you have to say how much tree removal in total you have in acreage, you also have to give it in 0 to 199 feet, and then in 200 to 299 feet and 300 feet and greater, because that from a roadway or a rail, so that you can determine whether you have to pay mitigation or not. So that is why we typically have been having to come back and ask for the additional acreage and in those breakouts so that we know whether there's going to have to be mitigation or not. Also, you want to look at all cultural resource information to see if there's anything that you need to include in that, as well as hazmat. A lot of localities lately have got projects that are coming really close to ordinary high water marks, but they're saying that they're not going to get within it. One of the things that we're stressing is that you either address it on the plans itself or in your pre-con or somewhere. If you're going to definitely stick with we're not going to get within ordinary high water, put that somewhere so the contractors will know that, because if you don't and they get into ordinary high water, then you just had an impact without a permit. So we're trying to stress that so that you don't have to go back once you're under construction to get that fixed. We've had a couple changes in environmental lately. So if you have a NEPA or a CERP question, you can go to Fred Davis or Bruce Penner. And anything natural resource-wise, threatened and endangered species, water quality, even some of the NEPA and CERP, I can delve into a little bit. So you can give me a call on that as well. And are there any questions?
All right, well, I'm not seeing any in the chat box. Again, if you folks want to add those there, we'll try to pick them up as best we can. We'll pause for a few more seconds here to make sure no one else has any questions they'd like to ask verbally. All right, we're hearing and seeing none. We're going to turn over to Mr. Jesse Nestor to talk about defining some of the LAP roles and responsibilities. Definitely knowing what your role is and what you're responsible for is definitely an important piece of an LAP project. So, Jesse.
All right. Thanks, Anthony. I'm Jesse, and I'm one of the project coordinators here in the Salem district. I will be speaking for a few minutes about LAP roles and responsibilities and focusing on what it means for a project to be locally administered. I'll start by taking a look at roles and responsibilities during the application and project agreement process. As you know, the application is prepared by the local program authority, who may utilize assistance from a consultant, and then is received and reviewed by VDOT. The project agreement is then prepared by VDOT, executed by the locality, and finally executed by VDOT. Please note that while consultants may be utilized during the application process, they are not directly obligated by the application or the agreement. Taking a closer look at the application process, we see that only LPAs can submit applications, and also that it's the applicant's responsibility to review application materials, ensure that funding will only be used for eligible items, and respond to VDOT's comments in the SMART portal. Also during the application process, VDOT will review the application for conformity with program requirements, suggest changes based on previous experience, and when applications are complete, validate applications. Moving on, let's take a closer look at the agreement process. The project agreement outlines a number of roles and responsibilities for the project. A recent word search of a standard project agreement revealed that the locality is mentioned 44 times, the department is mentioned 40 times, and that there is no reference to a consultant anywhere in the agreement. I draw your attention to this point just simply because this is why VDOT measures locality performance, and that we do not measure or track consultant performance for locally administered projects in any way. Digging a little deeper into the agreement, we see that the locality has expressed its desire to administer the project, is committed to developing and delivering the project, and that the locality and VDOT have both concurred with the locality's administration of the phases of the work in accordance with all applicable laws and regulations. We also see that roles and responsibilities are further defined. Specifically, the locality shall be responsible for all activities necessary to complete the project phases, shall meet funding obligation and expenditure timelines, shall keep accurate and complete records, and again shall administer the project in compliance with all applicable laws and regulations. VDOT shall perform actions and provide decisions and approvals as required, shall audit project records and documentation, and shall make available guidelines to assist the locality, which comes primarily in the form of the LAP manual. So let's take a look at what the LAP manual has to say. Chapter 3, Roles and Responsibilities, provides specific guidance and further describes roles and responsibilities and expectations. Some of the roles described includes the responsible person, who is a full-time employee of the locality, the responsible charge engineer, who can be a local employee or a consultant, and the VDOT project coordinator and VDOT construction monitor. Chapter 3 also specifically mentions several VDOT oversight activities for federal aid projects. These activities are used to strategically measure progress and monitor compliance with federal regulations. Chapter 3 specifically describes several requirements of the locality. Again, we see the locality is required to provide a full-time employee who is responsible for the project and a responsible charge engineer during project design and construction. One critical step identified is project scoping, at which time the project schedule and budget is baselined on the dashboard. It is especially important to note that the locality is responsible for monitoring the schedule and estimate throughout the life of the project, as the locality is responsible for any funding beyond what is shown on the Appendix A. The locality is also responsible for completing environmental work, including preparing the NEPA document, conducting studies and investigations, for obtaining any permits that are required, and for upholding whatever environmental commitments have been made. The project design, including the plans, specs, and cost estimate, are to be prepared by the locality or under the locality's direction by the responsible charge engineer. The locality should review each of these items for conformance with design standards and eligibility prior to submission to VDOT. The locality responsible is for QA/QC, and note that VDOT may request evidence of local review or even decline to review plans that appear to be incomplete or insufficient. The locality is responsible for meeting public participation requirements, which might include a public hearing or posting a willingness to hold a public hearing. The locality is also responsible for right-of-way acquisition and utility relocation in accordance with the Uniform Act, for preparing bidding documents, and for advertising the project after receiving authorization from VDOT. The locality is also responsible for requesting civil rights goals and then shares in responsibility for monitoring civil rights requirements. The locality must request authorization to award the construction contract and then makes the award after receiving authorization from VDOT. In construction, the locality is responsible for monitoring construction of the project, including QA/QC, materials requirements, daily inspections, all of which may be accomplished with some assistance from a CEI consultant. At the end of construction, the locality is responsible for coordinating final inspection with VDOT's construction monitor and for accepting the project. So to summarize all of this in just one slide, VDOT's roles and responsibilities are focused on project oversight using strategically selected milestones to ensure compliance with applicable regulations and requirements. Local administration is accepting and carrying out the delegated responsibility as outlined in the funding agreement, monitoring progress as it relates to the baseline schedule and budget, which is reflected on the dashboard, and staying engaged throughout the development and delivery of the project, monitoring the performance of consultants and contractors with the ultimate goal of delivering a successful project ahead of the baseline schedule and under the baseline budget. And if anybody has any questions, we'll open the floor up.
All right, Jesse, I'm looking in the chat box. I don't see any yet. Pass this back over. So does anybody have any questions of Jesse or anything as far as LAP roles and responsibilities? And again, it's very important to kind of know who is doing what. You know, we get to the end of a task and realize, well, I thought you were doing that type of deal. So appreciate the diving into that deeper. And I will point out for you folks who've been in our presentation before, some of us will insert our own pictures or images and for entertainment reasons, but there are some pranksters amongst our group who will insert things, and sometimes we don't know. So if we kind of giggle at the time we first see our slide, no, we've seen the slides before. We haven't actually seen the final version. I say all that to say that we're getting ready to enter into some slides and comments from our administration and central office, and I'm hoping that we didn't play any pranks on Russ or Rob. I'm instructing folks not to do that, but we're going to find out here in a second whether or not that was adhered to. So if you don't mind going to the next slide. So again, we're very excited to have some of our VDOT leadership with us this morning. I believe both of these gentlemen are on the call already. We have Russ Dudley joining us. He's the Division Administrator for Local Assistance and Central Office. Many of you folks have interacted with him before, probably at the Local Programs Workshop. We also have our Chief Commissioner, Bob Carey. I'm going to mute my mic and turn it over to Russ for a few comments, and then we'll have Rob come in as well. So Russ, if you're prepared, we're going to go ahead and let you go first.
Thanks, Anthony. Well, I'm a little disappointed I don't have anything on my slide there. I was kind of looking forward to it. I'm a big 18 fan and airplane fan, so those are great. First of all, I'll make sure you guys can hear me pretty well. My mic's not the best mic in the world on this computer, but
yes, we hear you.
Great. So first of all, I want to thank Salem District for keeping our locality days going in spite of everything that's going on within the agency and for letting me be a part of this. I've got to say, Salem has really set the bar for locality days across the state. Yeah, you guys did this. This is great. A lot of good information. I've been listening in to the whole session. So I'll keep our comments short here because I know you'd much rather get to the more important people that come after me and the award that's coming up. What I have on this slide, what you see on this slide, is just a list of strategies or focus areas that we've been working on, and we're going to continue to work on in the foreseeable future. This is from our central office perspective. This year, our overall state numbers for on-time performance for local projects was a little down. And I do appreciate the Salem district localities pulling those numbers up a little bit. And but with all these strategies and these focus areas and things you can hear about, I think we're going to see that turn around here pretty soon. And I'm looking forward to see the results of our work. Most importantly, from a central office perspective, we want to make sure that we're all working in the same direction. We all have the same understanding of our business rules. And that we're all on a level playing field, and so that we can all be successful. One of your fellow Salem localities recently said at a local programs workshop that you have to know your sweet spot. I think that was Luke Pugh. And so that means what types of projects can you deliver successfully, and knowing that and working with VDOT and localities can share the workload and leverage the advantages each organization has, so that we can all be successful. We've been creating a number of tools here in central office to help everyone get to that success and help everyone figure out just what that sweet spot really is and keep us all working together efficiently. You've heard Tommy mention some of those today, and you heard about some of the other things today we've been working on, and a lot of those just come out of the districts. We'll see districts develop something that looks great for us to implement statewide, and you see that one of those, our local performance, external local performance website, really sort of grew out of something that Salem had already been doing. So we appreciate that. And one thing we do have an enhanced request administer project process, and we're creating more data information that allows our project coordinators to get some early warning for at-risk projects so that they can spend their time and attention at those projects that really need the attention. We've also fully implemented our qualifications program this year, so I'm really excited about that, and we are planning to open up that training to consultants here very soon. We will also be rolling out a new local project submittals and document workflow system using our project-wide software later this year. And that should really provide more consistent and transparency in our program. And that's something else I think that I'm excited about and I'm looking forward to. I encourage everyone to take a look at our external performance page that we just published, probably the first of this year, and or first of this month, and provide any feedback that you have. And as always, if you have any feedback on our program at all, I'm always available. I'm always willing to take phone calls and hear new ideas. So I'm always here, and I know Rob's got some good comments to come after me, so I'm going to turn it over to Rob.
All right, thanks, Russ. Number one, good morning. Glad to be here with y'all today, and I don't have a PowerPoint, just me. I'm again Rob Carey. I'm Chief Deputy Commissioner of VDOT, and this January 1st will mark my 30-year anniversary with the agency. I wanted to start with safety. About a month ago or so, there was a contractor's employee that was killed in Portsmouth, and just picking up a work zone associated with utility work, and was struck and killed, sort of finishing their work day and got hit. And just to reiterate, the work that we do can be very dangerous, and you all as local partners have a big part in that to make sure that your employees who are out there and consultants overseeing the work and so forth, that they stay focused, they help each other stay safe every day and stay aware of surroundings, and recognize that unfortunately, even with the law being changed, people still drive through there. They're not paying attention. They got cell phones in their hands, and just ask you to stay on top of contractor safety. I mean, they do a good job themselves, but we need to help them as well. Also want to thank Anthony and all the district staff there in Salem. I was in Salem for quite a while, and they do a great job. As Russ said, they're leaders in this area, and I think you've got a great team to both within VDOT and then the localities that we work with. It makes a really good combination there. I wanted to talk a little bit about how, really during the pandemic, you all have been at VDOT side every step of the way. We've very fortunately been able to show a commitment to safety in a different way in the pandemic sense. Everybody did what they needed to keep our people all working throughout this thing. We learned as we went along. It wasn't perfect, but we adjusted when needed, and you all did as well, and really want to thank you for that. And certainly there's been challenging times throughout this, and lots of unknowns around money and what's going to happen, and just everybody's worried about safety. But really, we've all excelled during this. I mean, not one project did not move forward. No projects were stopped. We kept thousands of people employed, whether within the state, local government, contractors, consultants. We kept a very important economic engine that is transportation moving. Now, I'll say revenue forecasts for transportation are still dynamic. I mean, we're making progress there, but we won't know exactly how all this comes out for a while. We've got changes in daily traffic patterns, lots of telework opportunities we've seen throughout this. Traveler choices coming out of the pandemic all have major impact on revenue for transportation. So we'll just have to see. But I mean, I do feel like we're in a really good spot. And I will tell you from perspective of somebody that meets with other states from time to time, we're very fortunate. Many states did not fare as well. They didn't go into the pandemic in as strong a financial position as Virginia did. We were fortunate in that regard. We were able to make some adjustments through our Commonwealth Transportation Board that allowed everything to move forward and really avoid the worst things that many other states had to live through. I also want to talk about our credibility, and VDOT's credibility, your credibility, it's all intertwined when it comes to transportation. In Salem, over the last 3 years, the locally administered projects represent about 55% of those projects over the last 3 years. So it's a huge piece of what we're doing. And we've met goals for on time and on budget. And we have high quality work zones. We have easy access during construction. We have high quality finished projects. And that is all stuff that brings credibility to what we do. People trust what we do. They trust we'll deliver on time. They trust it'll be a good project. And what that resulted in really was, some really good impacts. I tell people all the time, our credibility, we make small deposits every day. We take care of a pothole. We build a turn lane somewhere, whatever it is, these small deposits just repeated throughout the state every day. But we can make huge withdrawals. We can have one problem and really make a big withdrawal from that credibility bank. But because we had a high credibility balance for a number of years now, we got through the legislature, the Omnibus Transportation Bill. And what did that mean? It really modernized and created a sustainable program. It indexed the gas tax. So as prices go up, that we don't have to worry about increasing the gas tax in terms of that. Inflation is baked into that. What else did it mean? 3,700 projects across the state, $17 billion in projects. That's a lot of jobs. That's a lot of jobs and a lot of improvement in quality of life for people. And without that credibility that we've gained over the years, there wouldn't have been any 81 legislation. It was unthinkable, actually, that it got through to me. I was amazed that it made it through. Just how it got there, it had not passed, and then the governor amended it, and it went back during a veto session and passed. So really threading a needle in that regard. But it's not just 81; it's all the interstates across the state benefited from that. It's a huge success, and I think that's another example because of credibility. We also, with credibility, in another area of the state, in the Central Virginia region, they created the Central Virginia Transportation Authority, like we have in Northern Virginia, Hampton Roads. That's $170 million a year. That makes Central Virginia projects far more competitive in smart scale because they can bring that money and leverage, and you know how smart scale works. So that certainly allows them to leverage $170 million a year that otherwise wouldn't be possible. So I just want to say that credibility, that's why it's so important, is because it's created those opportunities that we otherwise wouldn't have had. So lastly, I just want to say thank you again for everything that you all do. I think you're great partners. I hope you feel we are great partners, Anthony and his team and all the rest of the people there, in getting these projects done for 8.5 million residents of Virginia. We bring, I think, together as a team, professionalism, expertise, and really a focus on time, on budget with high quality, getting these projects out and improving quality of life for 8.5 million residents across the state. Again, I just can't say thanks enough. It's been a challenging year. You all have adapted and progressed and got stuff done that many people wouldn't have thought possible. So thank you very much for those efforts. Anthony?
Thank both you gentlemen for your time today. I appreciate those comments and appreciate your support of our program and what we do here in Salem. I think we're going to shift gears a little bit here. I hope you guys can both stay on as we get into a piece of this of our presentation that I'm pretty excited about. We started this a few years ago. We started presenting the Locality of the Year Award to what we identified as kind of the premier locality in a couple categories. I'm going to share that slide here in a second that talks about how we chose those folks. So appreciate again y'all's comments. Hope you can stay on with here. We also have our CTB member that will be joining us here in a second. But before he does, the slide you have in front of you, you've seen this before, but I want you guys out there to know that whenever we choose our locality of the year, it's not just we're drawing a name out of a hat or picking who our buddy is, things like that. I mean, this is a very detailed scoring process. We score throughout the year based on a number of criteria. You see the communication and participation category, how often folks participate in our training opportunities that we offer, whether or not this year, there was a new change this year. We introduced something called the District Project Pipeline, where we spent many hours meeting with each individual locality, talking about potential projects that they may want to fund, what would be the best funding program for that, and just some other things like that. And then this year, we also gave points about whether or not the locality has completed the qualifications program. That's been a big step that Russ and his team have incorporated over the last couple of years. In the middle there, you see project development and delivery. And I'm not going to read through all those, but all those things come into play in the scoring process. And then on the far right side of the slide here, the performance. Tommy and others have talked about dashboard today. So we look at each individual locality's dashboard numbers, and then the number of projects they completed with a final reimbursement request during the scoring year. So went into that probably a little bit greater detail than I intended, but I just want everybody to know that there's a lot of effort goes into scoring this, and folks that win this award should be very proud of their efforts. And so if you go to the next slide, we wanted to spend just a few minutes and a few moments talking about previous winners. You see there in 2018, that was the very first year we ever did it. That was held was that in Blacksburg where we had that event?
That was
Blacksburg, Christiansburg area.
Oh wait, that one
It was in New River Valley.
Yeah, New River Valley. We had that event there. That was the first year we ever did it. Actually, no one even knew we were going to award that. So when we brought out the plaque, everybody's like, what was this about? What did we just win? And so in 2018, City of Galax won that award. And Galax really kind of rose to the top in 2018. And we just want to, again, recognize their efforts. And also the reason we have this slide up and want to talk about Galax, Keith Barker has joined us in this meeting today. And I'm not going to put Keith on the spot and ask him to make any comments, but Keith recently retired, and Keith has been a huge attribute to the local program here in our district and also statewide. Keith has presented at the statewide local programs workshop. He's been a great resource for us anytime we wanted to bounce ideas off him of like, hey, what do you think about this? We're going to implement this. What do you think? And so just kudos to Keith and his staff in City of Galax for winning in 2018. And just another heartfelt thanks to Keith for all the effort that he put into over the years. And again, hopefully you guys can, if you know Keith, reach out to him and congratulate him on his recent retirement from City of Galax. In 2019, the Locality of the Year winner was City of Roanoke. I do recall that was in town event, and that where the event was. That feels like an eternity ago when we were in person with you guys and doing this type of event. And hopefully, again, we'll do that again next year. But in 2019, the Locality of the Year winner was City of Roanoke. Again, really rose to the occasion during that year and delivered a ton of projects and did them very well. So again, we want to recognize them. Last year, if you go to the next slide, in 2020, see, here we go. This is what I was talking about, people sliding in practical jokes. And if you guys know me, you know I'm not a Hokie fan. And I'm very much looking forward to when we beat them this year and bring back the Black Diamond Trophy to Morgantown. So, Adam, appreciate you sliding that in. And so 2020, the winner was Town of Christiansburg. And the reason we want to pause and recognize them again is last year, of course, we were not in person. We actually presented this plaque via YouTube video from my basement, and Ken and Dr. Smoot and others were in, I don't know what rooms y'all were in, what bomb shelters you were in, but we did this presentation in 2020 in that setting. So we wanted to pause and recognize Town of Christiansburg in 2020, the great work that they did. Also pause there to say that you see in the bottom left of that staff photo up there is Wayne Nelson. Wayne Nelson actually retired recently, I want to say in the last month or so. And I don't know if Wayne was able to join us. We did send him an invite. If he's online, again, Wayne, thank you very much for joining and for all the great effort that you put into the support that you gave to our program and how many times we leaned on you as well. And so again, we want to recognize the 2020 winner, which was Town of Christiansburg. So saying that, I see that Dr. Smoot has joined us, and I'm going to mute my mic. And Dr. Smoot, if you'd like to make any remarks just about in general about the LAP program and about your support of that, and then we will unveil the 2021 winner. So Dr. Smoot, if you'd like to make some comments.
Anthony, thank you very much, and good morning, everyone, and appreciate so many people from across the Salem district getting together this morning for something that is very important to the effective delivery of our projects. The partnership between VDOT and localities within the Salem district is critical to meeting the transportation needs, not only just of our region, but of the entire Commonwealth. Transportation is a big business, and more importantly, it's one that touches the life of practically every citizen in our region. Even those who do not travel very often are almost daily recipients of goods or services that are transported across our highways and our roads. And the fact that so many of you continued to work during the COVID days when so many others may have been working from home, but as we all know, we cannot build and maintain roads and highways from home. And I appreciate so much that so many were willing to get out there on the front line and keep things moving along. Delivering projects on time and on budget is very important. The Commonwealth Transportation Board receives regular reports that show how each district is doing in that regard, and then localities within the district. I can tell you from working in state government and with state government over a long period that it is a bad idea to leave money laying around in state government. It's also bad to get off schedule and off budget in terms of future consideration of funding. While that is not always a factor in funding projects at the local level, it certainly comes to the attention of the Commonwealth Transportation Board, and I appreciate the wonderful job that you all are doing within the Salem district to give a very favorable impression of our district. I'm going to turn this back now to Anthony with a bit of a drum roll as he gets ready to announce the winners.
I was just going to say, you must have seen my presentation beforehand because we had a little bit of a drum roll interjected. I'm going to cover up the thing and hold up the camera so you guys cannot see. Again, we're very excited to do this in a different setting yet again. But Adam, you'll go ahead and click there and unveil the 2021 winner. And in a back-to-back setting for the first time ever, is Town of Christiansburg is a repeat winner. So again, very good effort from those folks. I believe Dr. Smoot has a few more comments about just kind of some of the accolades and some of the reasons why Christiansburg has won it. And then Ken King is going to offer some comments as well. So I'm going to mute my mic.
Sure, and I'll do this quickly. It's a pleasure to work with Randy Wingfield, Andrew Warren, others on their staff on projects in this region. I drive on roads in Christiansburg several times a week. So I'm a personal recipient of your good work there. I also want to acknowledge the leadership of Mayor Mike Barber, who was absolutely central in extending passenger rail to the New River Valley, recent decisions. And I know that he also is very appreciative of the work being done. The town of Christiansburg has had 14 projects over the past 3 years. It delivered 92% of those on schedule and 85% of them on budget. This is a wonderful record, and I want to recognize and express my appreciation for it. I also want to say that, Anthony, maybe I should wait till you do this, but there are 2 other localities, I won't be specific at this time, that were very close to prevailing in recognizing this in the current year in achieving this distinction. And you can talk about those later, but we also appreciate the 2 localities that you're going to mention that have contributed to the good record in the Salem district. So thanks to everyone for being a part of this. It is a big business, and it is one that makes a great impact on the lives of our citizens.
All right. Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Smoot. I appreciate your comments as well, Deputy Commissioner Carey. Certainly, I was provided some welcoming comments here this morning, and many of the themes that you've touched on. But first, to just give my thanks and congratulations to the Town of Christiansburg, our first back-to-back winner. I will share the 2 that were hot on the tails. Razor thin, I think is the way it was described, was actually 2 of the previous winners. The city of Galax and the city of Roanoke were both very, very close into those finishing results. And I do just want to highlight that, Anthony touched on that criteria. There's a lot of great work that's going on, both, tactical, getting the projects completed, but also long-term programmatic. Because when we talked about the engagement at all the various workshops and the local locality day, this activity, district training opportunities, the pipeline discussions, those are all the things that, are the small investments you make day after day, month after month, that really pay dividends in the end. And as Dr. Smoot noted, they pay dividends for first, the local community. I'm always highlighting to our staff, in particular, I often highlight to the staff that Dr. Smoot made reference to, our field forces that stayed engaged and working all during the pandemic in a hands-on way, that, they shouldn't take for granted the great opportunity they have, because most of our folks that are out there, just like the maintenance staff and others that you have within the localities to serve, you're serving the community that largely you live in, or are very close to. And that's a great opportunity. There are so many noble professions that are out there, but we have this great opportunity to be gainfully employed in being an engaged part of the communities that we serve. And so the work that's been done by the Town of Christiansburg and the others that have done such great work this year just reflects that. You've had the opportunity to really improve their community, both from transportation, but an overall quality of life. I talked about this morning, the passenger rail. I made note of that and what a difference that's going to make, and what opportunities that's going to provide to our district to be taking advantage of both the investments in rural connectivity as well as that multimodal urban connectivity there at our university towns, as well as back toward the Roanoke Valley and the New River Valley and connections more broadly all around the district. So certainly, Wayne and Keith, in your retirement, I know that when you look back, on the things that you did in your career, they have to be also highlighted by the great projects that you had the opportunity to bring to bear. And there'll be lasting examples of the contributions that each of you individually made. But then, when you look more broadly across the entire Salem district, it's the work that we get to do together in partnership to really not just change the transportation system, but really improve the quality of life of the community that we call home. And, that is the community, of course, we want to keep thriving and available to our children and the next generation. And so I just, it's great things happen through small investments, and those small investments add up. And I appreciate everything. Town of Christiansburg, City of Galax, City of Roanoke, and all of our other localities. I appreciate the investments that you're making with us in partnership to try to make those improvements for the community that we serve and that we call home. So congratulations both to the town of Christiansburg, the leadership there, and to all of those that are a part of our programs. I appreciate it very much.
All right, thanks. So just real quick, the plaque that will be heading to Christiansburg in some way, shape, or form, we'll find some way to get it down to you guys soon. This will be coming your way. We also were really excited. Russ and his staff actually gave a free registration to the statewide local programs workshop to the winning locality of the year. So Town of Christiansburg staff, I'll be reaching out to you guys. If you'll just give me a name and email address of who will be taking that registration, we'll make sure to get you the link so that you can register for that. So if you'll go to the next couple slides here. So real quick, you guys see on the screen in front of you now, that image on the left, that is a perpetual plaque that hangs near our auditorium here in the admin building. And you can see we've completed the first 4 years of that. Tommy was picking with me the other day that there's only so many slots, and so perhaps I'm going to retire. Maybe not before all that gets filled out. But you see that we're very proud of our winners. We're very proud of this program. And so this perpetual plaque hangs in our admin building right outside the auditorium. So any folks that come in for training or meetings will see that. So Christiansburg, your plaque has been updated, and you see that on there. The question of who's next, I always get excited that whenever we first did this, the very first year and awarded the city Galax, I've told this story before. You're probably getting tired of hearing it, but Wayne Nelson actually came up to me at lunchtime of that day and was like, "Hey, how do we win this? What do we got to do? How do we get to be more competitive?" Well, the proof's in the pudding. Wayne and his staff have done it the last couple of years. So the question of who's next, we're excited to see who kind of steps up. I would be remiss if I didn't recognize some what I labeled up and comers on my piece of paper here. I went back and took a look at what localities have kind of increased their scores over the years. And the four that really jumped out at me when I looked at this year, the town of Blacksburg, Franklin County, Roanoke County, and City of Salem have all had upticks in their scores over the last couple of years. So we really appreciate the fact that you guys have been open to any advice or recommendations or assistance that we would provide. And again, those localities I've labeled as up and comers. We'll see if perhaps next year y'all are on this perpetual plaque for 2022. So
don't worry, it's like the Stanley Cup. We'll just keep adding.
We'll just have more plaques. Get it engraved more. So, all right. So with that, and this is not, we didn't tack this on at the end because it was the least important thing. This is just a quick, timely update of the current funding programs, application processes that are out now. Cheryl has just 2 real quick slides on that and want to give an update. So Cheryl, I'm going to mute my mic and turn it over to you for just a real quick second.
All right, good morning, everybody. This screenshot of the smart portal should look familiar to all of you. Hopefully, it is not coming as a surprise to anyone that revenue sharing and transportation alternatives pre-applications were due on July 1st. Just a quick update, the Salem district had 16 transportation alternatives pre-applications submitted and 41 revenue sharing pre-applications. Currently, the district is reviewing and validating those pre-applications, and this step should be completed by August 15th. And at that time, the portal will be opening back up for the final application submittals. The final applications will be due by 5 p.m. on October 1st, and all of the required documentation is due by the October 1st deadline. That would include the request to administer forms, resolutions, sketches, schedules, estimates, and the estimate workbook that Alex spoke about earlier this morning. You can go ahead and flip to the next slide, Anthony. And just as a quick reminder, up next in the funding arena will be the State of Good Repair paving and local bridge funding. You can look for more information on these programs to be coming this fall with a December deadline on those applications. And with that, if you have any questions, please let me know or put them in the chat box.
All right, we're soon going to be running out of time for you folks to enter questions in the chat box because we'll all be logging out of this meeting. So we want to pause real quick and give one last opportunity for questions or comments. Don't want you to leave with any regrets. So see, I did see this slide ahead of time, so I wasn't completely taken off base with this one. Does anybody have any additional comments or questions as far as either Cheryl's comments on the current funding applications or anything that you've heard up to this point? All righty, we're hearing none. So just real quick, I want to wrap up with some comments. Be on the lookout for training opportunities. Both Andrew and Alex noted this morning that they were going to be offering some training in the coming weeks and months on various topics. So be on the lookout for that. I'm not sure who will be sending out the emails, but definitely be on the lookout for that, and we'll try to get some opportunities out to you guys. Secondly, and lastly, here is the 2021 Local Programs Workshop. That is the statewide event that many of you folks have attended in the past. That is back in person this year. Pretty excited about seeing a lot of you folks in person. That's going to be at the back end of October in Norfolk. And Russ, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I believe registration for the general audience, if you will, starts in August, right in the first part of August. So folks need to be on the lookout for the ability to go ahead and register for that. And of course, Town of Christiansburg already has a free registration in their back pocket. So if you guys can reach out to me on that, we'll get you signed up for that. All right. And Russ just confirmed that would be in August when that registration will be opening up. So you go to the last slide there, and I have no idea what Adam has stuck in here. Maybe nothing at all. That's awesome. Okay. All right. So perhaps many of y'all are excited about the fact that we're wrapping up. I promise you we'll be done before lunch, and we are, assuming that you eat after 11:29. So thanks everyone for joining us today. Hopefully you found this to be informative and find this to be a good use of your time. And we look forward to seeing you guys in person in the very near future. So everyone have a good rest of your day, and thanks for joining us.